GM, we are live on another episode here on the Gaming on Solana account, and I'm excited. This is a different conversation today because something massive just went down this past weekend called the Kentucky Derby. And if you're not do not know what that was, well, guess what? We brought Ian here. He's going to give us the 411 on the Kentucky Derby, but also talk about how photo finish was designed and inspired in the way photo finish is incorporating into what the Kentucky Derby just happened this past weekend. So, Ian, what's going on, man? Welcome back. I'm sure the parties were great, the vibes were great. I wanna know it all. I want to know the 411 on how things go down at the Kentucky Derby this past weekend. But first, give us that 30-second introduction, who you are and what you're doing with photo finish.
Yeah, I'm still. I gotta be honest, man. I'm smarting by not being in your intro video. Like, what do I have to do? Like,
Dude, can the dev? I'm gonna have to tell them, hey man, the devs got to
yeah,
do something about this.
like what? We're the official game of the Kentucky Derby, and we don't make the list.
I'm on it, man.
Please
they're.
do.
You know what? I'm gonna send them the "you're fired" meme right now.
Yeah, dude. All right. So anyway, once I get over that, once my blood stops boiling from that massive slight. Yeah, my name is Ian Cummings. I am the founder at Third Time Games, and we've actually been in business for 10 plus years now, I guess. It's crazy. And we make Photo Finish Live, sort of our flagship product, and it is a virtual horse racing game on Solana. It is the official partner of the Kentucky Derby. We've been live for over 2 years now. It's pretty wild. In sort of beta form for nearly 3 years, and one of the survivors of the insane world of Solana over the since 2021.
Yeah, man. I think it's really like I'm excited for it to talk a little bit about the Kentucky Derby and everything that went down this weekend. You guys were there. You had I believe like some sort of activation there as well. Give us like first of all like what you were going into that weekend and what that was all meant for you and what it means for the project itself to be at something like this. And I think like from what I read or saw as well, it was like this was a record breaking like viewership of how many people were watching. So not only is that massive, but like also like to be in front of all these new faces, to show them what photo finish is for mass adoption. What was all that going into that weekend?
Yeah, I mean it's crazy. It's a there's nothing like it, and I definitely would suggest that folks bucket list going to the Derby because it's like stepping back in time a little bit into a different era. You look around and there's just 100,000 plus people dressed like it's the 1920s or something. It's just such a strange party that everyone appears and they agree to abide by this. I'm gonna wear a seersucker suit, or I'm gonna wear a crazy hat or a dress, and it is definitely a party. I mean, it is a marathon, not a sprint. It now lasts like nearly the whole week. People start rolling into Louisville on Monday or Tuesday, and the race days, there's typically 12, maybe 14 races, but it's like 8 to 10 hours long. So you're there a long time. There is infinite, endless bourbon, and it is, and a lot of cigars, and so the party atmosphere is kind of just like nothing else. It's just very unique and cool. And for photo finish, it's a this is our third year in a row of going, and it's still mind blowing to me that we even landed this deal. I mean, we are a small game team. I worked at EA Sports for 10 years. If we had landed the Kentucky Derby license there, it would have been a big deal, much less this like little tiny 10-person indie game studio. And so every time I'm pinching myself that like we're the game of this, we're meeting all the people, hanging out with all the Churchill Downs folks or what have you. So that part is great. The point of this year was really unveiling a new product that we have been working on for quite a while now. We sort of teased it at Breakpoint, but we did our first live demo, and that's called Simulcast. And the idea of that is really just that Photo Finish now, multiple years in, Players are playing, they're spending money. We have so many amazing horse owners that are racing every single day, every few minutes, every single day, that we've now turned that into a live feed that anyone can consume. And so that was the idea. We show up at simulcast. We work with our partners, Baxis, who's a fellow Solana company that I think should definitely get some looks from you guys. They're an amazing company. And Baxis does a lot of marketplace stuff for high dollar spirits and liquors and bourbons and whiskeys. And so it was really like we had a big demo of how to bet, how to watch our virtual races, how to see this live feed, and unveiled that on Thursday. And then it was like we had racing and then bourbon tastings and then choosing alcohols and then more betting. And then, it's an unbelievable marathon of bourbon betting and horse racing.
All right, so I gotta ask you though, man, how did you choose the outfit, and what was the outfit you had on this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I just go with like a tan sort of suit, linen suit thing. I bought it literally the day before I went, mainly because I've got a wedding to go to in California in a few weeks, and they said that they need like the specific style. So I'm like, all right, I'll just buy a new. But I didn't go anything crazy. There were quite a few folks there that had horse printed roses or what have you all over the suit. I didn't go crazy. I do want to do that one year. When Crown goes to $2, I'll buy a Crown themed suit or something and wear that.
Sign me up for that one because
Yeah.
I want to do the whole suit. It's funny. I think you and I spoke a couple months ago, and you were telling me about the Kentucky Derby and everything that you were going, and I was like, "Yo, I want to go." But I always said, like, if I'm gonna go to like an event like that, I feel like I have to like immerse myself in that whole experience, right? And it's like the suit, the cigars, the drinking,
Oh
the
yeah.
events, and like that's the whole like Kentucky Derby experience, because what we see on TV is 3 minutes, right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
it's 3 minutes, and like it's a quick like 30-minute or hour coverage of it. So I think like it doesn't really tell that story until you really start like digging deep into like social media and like seeing like the way that the parties are, the events, and like who's actually there, right? Because like that's
Hmm.
another thing. Like the crowd and the community that's behind the Kentucky Derby is like something that I don't think gets talked about a lot. And like it's very prominent people as well, and like it's really cool to see like certain celebrities and stars there as well, and like why they're there, right? Because yes, the betting aspect of it I think is what makes it also catapult to where Kentucky Derby is today, but there's a whole nother experience behind the scenes, behind the curtains of what we see. So yeah, I think it was is just for me. I was like, by the way, fun fact. So I was actually riding my bike with my family. We're riding down by the beach and everything, and I was like kind of watching my time to make sure I know what time the Kentucky Derby was gonna. And like as the time was approaching, I was like, all right, I need to find the restaurant with the TVs, right? And like my family's like, why are we having dinner like right now or like eating food right now? And I was like, well, we have to watch the Kentucky Derby. And so here's
Hmm.
my daughter's like, so horses are racing, and I'm like, yeah, now you have to tell me which horse you think's gonna win. And they're like, but these names, and I'm like, yeah, the names. And so then they started asking me questions about the Kentucky Derby. And so I was like, I don't have these answers. I'm going to have Ian on the show. I need
No.
to ask
Oh,
him,
that's
like,
a yeah.
how do they come up with the names for the horses? Like, and how does that even, like, is there like a whole, like, I almost think that there's probably like a poly market out there of like how you guess for the names. And if, even in photo finish, like, cause I had to make my own name in photo finish, like, how does that come about?
Yeah, I mean, in real life, obviously, I thought this year's naming crop was one of the weakest. It was just like journalism. That's not a horse name. I don't know why they name it that. Or sovereignty. It's just like, those don't sound like horse names to me. There was even one named Rodriguez. It's just like, those aren't horse names. But then you have Flying Mohawk or Render Judgment. I thought, oh, those are a little bit chunk of gold. Those are better. A lot of times in real life, they will try to take from the stud or the mare, the parents, and sort of bring that name through the line. And so, for example, Tis Tastic, you saw that one in the Derby. Right away, oh, Tis the Law was a previous Derby horse. So it likely came from the Tis the Law bloodline. And there's another horse that's a famous stud called Tap It. And so you'll see Tap or tap it along in the name somewhere a lot. So they'll do that a lot so that you can recognize just without knowing anything, like, oh, it's from that bloodline of that stud, and it came from there. But other than that, man, I mean, it's just random, dude. There's so many. There's 20,000 plus horses each year. The same thing in photo finish. There's just tens of thousands all the time, and it becomes really difficult. I mean, we spent a lot of time. I ended up writing like an AI guided name scrambler to help you randomly generate. I mean, they're pretty wild, but it was getting so hard for our players. I even wrote at one point. I wrote a generator that had like 50,000 names in it, and it was hard coded, and they chewed through all of them. And then they're, so like the other part is there's a jockey club. You can't have the same name as another horse. There's some timeline before after the horse retires that before it can be used again. Um, and so it's very difficult. I mean, like I have a real horse in real life, and I called it Looks Rare, and I loved that one of just maintaining the sort of crypto ethos. I wanted to name it probably nothing, and they didn't allow me to do that, so I ended up with Looks Rare. But yeah, Looks Rare is a 5-year-old. He's still out there racing. He actually ran second place in California on Saturday. So it's just whatever inspires you, dude. That's exactly how it is.
Well, I think if Crown gets the $2, can we make sure we get one of
A lot of
the
Crown.
horses on the Kentucky Derby to be called Photo Finish, and then
Yeah.
just like tattoo the
Just
horse with
Crown.
like
Yeah.
Photo
Buy
Finish on the.
Crown. Buy Crown. It would be
Yeah,
a good
yeah,
one.
yeah.
I mean, anytime there's a Crown themed, which there are, there's always kind of a Crown themed name. You see a lot of those. Just it's part of the culture anyway. Um, and yeah, I bet a Crown horse every time I see it. Haven't
Yeah.
won yet, but
No, man, that's truly awesome. Kentucky Derby, and you were there. We just talked about the vibes and everything. What's one thing that you kind of took this weekend, though, that you came back, or you've been thinking on the plane ride home, and it was like, man, like I gotta either bring this into photo finish, or like this was unique, or this is new. Was there something new or different this time around that you just got your blood going, and you were like, man, I gotta like think of ways to incorporate this.
yeah, I mean, I think you see the most fun and interesting part of seeing the Derby and seeing horse racing reach this high scale is the social aspect of it. And I think when we look at what we're building, we have this really strong social community. These people have been playing, hundreds, thousands of people have been playing for years. Every day they're in the Discord, they're talking, having a good time, and you start to see that when people get together. Um, the social part of obviously watching the races, but also betting and strategizing together. And so that was a big angle for me taking away was like the this is something I've wanted to do for a long time, but it really crystallized in my head this sort of notion of being able to see where the action is going and what your friends are picking and what they're betting on is obviously really helpful for someone that maybe doesn't quite know. It's their way to get in. And you can look at something like Vector or any of the other things on crypto side to kind of that same idea that like, oh, I don't have the time to study every meme coin on the market, but I did see that a few of my friends bought it and they wrote a little blurb of what they thought. And so you get that vibe at the track where like Bryce, who's on my team, is this hardcore handicapper. He loves reading all the charts. He knows every horse that's in that race, and he knows their parents, and he knows their records, and he's like really into that. And I don't have that time, but being able to tail him, it's like okay, he's got the 4, 5, and 1 in this race. That's a great basis point for me, and maybe I'll just go bet the 4, 5, 1 too, or I'll go and do my own research and find out why he picked the 4 and the 5 and the 1, and just sort of like that social tale that comes from picking these horses and being around the track and being around the races is something that I'm looking to really try and revolutionize and make sure that we're doing in photo finish.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned some cool things there. I mean, it's a lot of what we're seeing is more of social engineering, right? How do we get to that social engineering of bringing more communities in, bringing more excitement in, and connecting with what the meta is changing, right? Especially with technology changing and the ways people are connecting. So I love that aspect of how you're thinking of like photo finish. All right, so Kentucky Derby's over. I think like there's several probably really prominent races coming up in the near future. Will you be there? Which one you're going to next? And like, yeah, man, as I start immersing into the experience, man, I'm like now really like more into like what photo finish, like I see where you're going right now, and I'm like, oh man, like this is why you got to get involved, why you got to be early to certain things, because the earlier you are, the better you are. And I think like you just mentioned Price, right? I mean, like the guy's like an encyclopedia for what some of these guys are. What's the
Yep.
next race that you guys are looking forward to? And we'll talk about partnerships in a minute because Kentucky Derby is a partner, but now there's other races coming up. How does Photo Finish become the next partner to something like this?
Yeah, so it's Triple Crown season in America. This is obviously the few months of the year where horse racing is the most popular in the U.S. And so Preakness is coming. That's in Maryland in 2 weeks, and it's always a tricky one. The Preakness is a very popular race. Will get high viewership, not as much as the Derby, but almost all of the like real boost hinges on whether sovereignty will actually run in the Preakness or not. And because that's all everyone really wants to see is, can a horse have a shot at this Triple Crown? It's such an impossible feat, even though it's pretty wild. Two horses did it relatively recently, and it hadn't been done in like 40 years or something prior to then. So it felt like it was an impossible feat, and then all of a sudden, American Pharoah and Justified did it pretty much, and that actually kind of hurt horse racing a little because everyone's like, oh, big deal. Now the Triple Crown. How hard is it? Two horses just did it. But those were really free courses, and I think people are starting to see that just it's not going to happen. So anyway, Preakness comes up in 2 weeks. I'm not going to go to that. It's just too short of a time to turn around. And so what we're focused on again is trying to build features and live ops around that event. Just have the community rally around Preakness is this weekend. Let's do pick'em challenges. Let's obviously enjoy betting on the race and experiencing this sort of fun phase of horse racing in the U.S. with these huge high dollar races, these multi-million-dollar races with the best horses in the world that are of this age. And then right after that, I think it's 3 weeks, is the Belmont. And so Belmont is in New York, up in Saratoga, and we might be going to that one. So we've actually been talking about a community meetup there. Saratoga, it's normally done at Belmont Park, which is right there in like Long Island, and that track is massive, and that it's been under construction for a while though, so they moved it up to upstate and basically near Albany, and it's a much smaller track and venue, so it's actually quite a bit harder to get a large group to go and get there. So that's the challenge of that one. So hopefully we go. If not, maybe we'll do it next year at the new Belmont, which will be huge and obviously much easier to get into the city, and you could stay in the city and then just take the train out. But anyway, it's about riding. It's the same thing. It's riding that sort of like event structure ourselves and having people excited about racing and earning free stuff and competing on leaderboards and just doing all the things that we typically do as game devs, but theming them around the Triple Crown. But the thing that a lot of people don't realize is just like it feels like this is everything, but it's actually not. Like this is just the U.S. I mean, there are bigger races like nearly every other week or every month in other countries. And of course, the U.S. this is a big deal, and this is our bread and butter and our home. But races in England or Australia, Melbourne Cup or Japan Cup or Hong Kong or Dubai are larger purses, more people betting, more volume. So it's just like it's always a year-round sport and it's global. So we're always on.
Yeah, I'm really excited that you mentioned that. Like, this is just a U.S. based thing that we're mentioning here because there is worldwide activities. There are, several massive races throughout the world, and I think like when I think about use cases for blockchain, or when I think about projects that are on the blockchain that are understanding the audience and understanding what it could solve, I think like Photo Finish, for what you just mentioned, for those even like wanting to explore it, this is exactly why I get excited about, because man, we just use technology to connect to everything around the world and bring it all into like a central hub where anybody could go on a photofinish.com, whatever the website link is. I'll let you make sure that I didn't
Not
mess that
live.
one up.
Mm-hmm.
But you're able to go there and anyone around the world is able to still have that experience throughout, like not just being, hey, this is a US based thing. It's anybody. So I think that was a really cool point there that you harped on. the partnership with Kentucky Derby was massive, and you talked about how massive that was. If you were at EA, that would have been like a huge way when you did it here at the in a Web3 studio, in a very small studio, and you manage a name like that. Is the now like that I'm assuming opening the doors to be able to go knock around the world at the Japan Cup, the Melbourne Cup, and all these Dubai Cups. Is that what's next on the roadmap? Is those type of partnerships what Photo Finish, or is there something more now here at like saying, hey, now we should partner more with like the horses and the jockeys and like
Right.
their whole like community there, like so many audiences to like almost to try to
I know.
please.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, licensing is a tricky thing. So I can give you some of my background too. I mean, so I worked with nearly every licensed sport while I was at EA. You know, the MLB, the NBA, the NFL, PGA, like, and I've loved working with Churchill Downs and the Derby. They've been absolutely great partners. We both are kind of like trying to figure it out. You know, how do you best utilize the game, and how do we get their their fan base to play the game? How do we get our younger gamers to go to the Derby? That's what they're trying to do. Everyone in horse racing, I think, knows their audience is older and they want young people to enjoy the sport. And so it's like we're trying to be that avenue. And so we've talked to like tons of tracks. I mean, we've talked to all the major players pretty much and have gone through that licensing sort of process. And for me, it was like until I feel comfortable with executing at a high level with Churchill, it was not worth expanding to another one. I mean, Churchill's the best in the
Yeah.
U.S. and so obviously going after Royal Ascot or Melbourne Cup or Japan Cup is I think the final form of photo finish has every major race in it. But until we kind of have it dialed with the main partner, that's of course just a couple hours away and in my same time zone and understands us, then it's sort of not really worth jumping into it yet. And we got pretty close on a few of those, and it was just sort of like, I don't know if this is the right lift for the game, if it will matter to the users, if it will matter to the licensor. Just it wouldn't move the needle for either of us enough until we have it sort of dialed in. And so that's really what I think our plan is. Now, in terms of the licensing of the league, that's really challenging, and it's unfortunate. I kind of wish that they had a little bit better organization in the sport, and you can see they all are battling with problems because of it. It's the reason, I think personally, it's a reason that the horse racing sport has not grown alongside a lot of these other sports, is because it's so disjointed, and so each track and ownership of the track is kind of a PvP against each other. Sometimes they have their own bookmaking. They don't want to share. And so you end up in this world, whereas like the NFL, you've got the commissioner, you've got the owners. They're all like, they're of course head to head against each other, but they report to the commish. There's no such thing in horse racing. And so they all are arguing about different things. And so there's no one governing body of, say, to get licenses to all the jockeys, to get licenses to all the horses, the way you could just contact the NFL and say, yeah, I would like an NFLPA license. I want all the players. I want the players union. You have to go individually. You'd have to go owner by owner by owner. And then even then, licensing horses is really murky, because they're not humans, and it's like a whole different thing, like what you're actually licensing. And as well, the other biggest problem with horse racing is, I think, in terms of fan base problem, is that the horses only race for 1 year and they retire and go breed. And so, you just imagine like, oh, Tom Brady's rookie year, he just retired, and you just never get that growing excitement of people attaching themselves. And so you hear people talk about Secretariat and all this stuff, and it's like, well, that was just one legendary horse. It only raced for 1 year, and so you can't really maintain fan base. So jockeys are a little closer, but I don't think jockeys are well known enough yet to license or to be worth the cost. And as much as I'd love to give jockeys more money, they don't get paid. A lot of times they're racing for like $100, $50. It would be great, but it's just, it doesn't quite move the needle. So it's a complicated one, man. I mean, obviously having gone through all the different sports, it's one of the trickiest, to navigate all the waters, and none of the licenses, because they're all so fragmented, have kind of enough value for the most part to make you want to like make that leap to buy a license or to be exclusive or whatever. Except for me, for Churchill, that was the one that made the most sense, and somehow we got it.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple like things that really stood out to me. Just a couple things, and I think like you mentioned the audience is a lot older, and why Web3 could bring in an influx of audience. But you also photo finish was live at like in Las Vegas at the Win, right? And
Yeah.
so like man, like you've already kind of like are knocking on some pretty big doors here. I mean, between Kentucky Derby, the Win at the Las Vegas, like these are pretty like I don't think people realize how hard it is to even get inside of a casino and be able to say, hey, photo, like I don't think people realize that the casino business is a business that literally is kind of almost, you're competing with them almost in the sense, right?
Mhm.
But I mean, you're bringing Web3 into a different, like one that we have said the casino business would be really, really great to see adopt blockchain because it could help them, and even like with ways that the payouts, transparency, and all that stuff. But you
Yep.
guys managed to get into the Win at Las Vegas. That's just massive. You want to talk to us like on what how you guys are doing this, because you have the Kentucky Derby, which is like I would say the plate, but then you have the Win, which is like, hey, you're bringing more people into this restaurant.
Yeah. I mean, dude, we're always working on it. It's really challenging. I think, how do we do it? It's that we do have a solid product with an amazing user base and real spend and real players and no bots and all this stuff. So I think a lot of folks are like, how come we're not getting this, or how come I can't get this partnership? I mean, it's like, well, I mean, we've got a real business and it's been running for quite a long time. And I think our background helps a lot. I mean, just being part of EA for so many years and having the connections that we have via FanDuel or DraftKings or all these folks that we've just been in the industry with, you have the right people that you can call and they'll vouch for you, and that kind of thing. And the Derby partnership, for example, I think the main reason we got it is that we had worked with NBC for many years to create virtual simulations of the race for their broadcasts. And that was just sort of a one-off thing that we did, that we had happened to meet some of the right people just because of the right contacts, and that alone legitimized us to Churchill. I think they were like, oh, NBC wouldn't work with just any jokers. They would vet them. And so that's really what it is. It's these stepping stones of getting all the right people. So the Vegas thing, that was an amazing opportunity from these guys that run the sports gambling podcast, and they have the ability to broadcast out of that Sirius XM studio in the Win, and you can book time at it, with those guys, and so they're players of the game already, and so it was just like, oh, perfect. So we're actually looking to try and do that more regularly, like, because I think the user base really enjoyed it. It looked like a real broadcast. It looked like an authentic, NBC broadcast almost. It looked like it was on ESPN, and they're presenting this virtual game like it's real. And while it's there, there's all these, as anyone that's walking by that studio in the Win sees the game playing. There's QR codes. They can sign up. People were actually scanning and signing up and getting horses there in the casino. And I'd never had thought we would be able to kind of Trojan horse our way in like that. I mean, just like you said, the casinos are walled gardens, but it was like, well, through the Sirius XM partnership, sort of angle, through the sports gambling podcast angle, then you're able to find your way in. So that's all it is, man. All this stuff is just relationships and biz dev, right?
Yeah.
That's the trick.
Make sure you give your biz dev guy
Oh yeah.
a bottle of bourbon, because he deserves it.
I know, yeah, yeah. I got some nice ones from Baxis. If you haven't looked up those guys, they basically are a marketplace. It's their core business for trading and buying and selling, whiskeys and bourbons. And I mean, some of the stuff they've got like $15,000 bottles on there. People can sell from their private collection, and so I scored a couple of real nice bottles. And then while we were in Kentucky, they were having us taste these just like unbelievable, 50-year-old things that had never even been opened before. So yeah, I'm making sure my team gets some of that, because it was the Maxis guys have the hookup, and I'm just sort of
Yeah.
tailing on them.
I'm gonna have to reach out to the Baxis guys after this and be like, "Hey, man, here's
Oh
my
yeah,
address.
absolutely.
We could do live tastings."
Yes,
I don't know how it will go, but we'll find out.
Mhm.
Look, I think like you're mentioning Las Vegas, the win, and the way the partnerships are working. It made me start thinking about like what do you see like the direction of virtual like horse racing and like betting and like all this? Like, where do you see like real world events like starting to blend? Like, is there some vision there that you're already kind of like, man, like being there this weekend, doing the Las Vegas thing, seeing how people are just going by with a QR code, scanning it, you're starting to see like some of the things that we've already been seeing that have the new influx of blood or the new breed. Let's just use the right words. The new breed is coming in.
Yep.
And is there something there, that vision already of how you're seeing this virtual horse racing evolving?
Yeah, and that's a big part of our strategy is really we're trying to own the whole stack of content all the way down to the betting. And because we think, number one, we have this great content feed, virtual racing. I think we got the best virtual racing product in the world because not only are we proving it with the users, I mean, the users have been playing it. There's, I think, $50 million of racing has already happened since we've been going. It's just kind of insane, the numbers. But, there's content now coming out of that racing, this PvP game. There's now racing happening every couple minutes that can be bet on. And so what we're trying to capture is the whole stack of then now, well, who bets on it and how do they bet on it? And that's not just betting on virtual racing, that's betting on esports or anything pari mutual. And so that's a big launch of ours, and that was what we demoed at on Friday, Saturday night there in Churchill or with Baxis was, this thing we call the OTB right now, the off-track betting working site. But that idea that we think we can present betting in a more unique way on Solana, trustless, transparent, fast, cheap, all the great things that Solana has. And that's what we demoed. And I think everyone was pretty blown away to see how fast and quick it can be when you build sort of you start from scratch yourself and you make betting a little more millennial friendly, not so sort of hardcore, and try and do your own spin. And so that's really our angle is like we started with virtual racing product. We've got this game that is super sticky and everyone loves, and we're continuing to make that. But like, how do we expand that ecosystem? It's adding betting to it. And then while we add betting to it, we can also capture betting as a much larger scope ourselves.
Yeah, I think, man, it's really cool. I always love these kind of conversations because you really start seeing a lot of this now not only play out, but you're starting to see the thought process behind how well you are planning all this. Because I think that's just the more important thing, being in an emerging market, being a startup, and all the stuff is like, do you know what you want to do in a year from now, and how do you want to do it, and how you're going to accomplish it? And I think, man, like the track record already there for what you guys have been doing. I mean, you said 10 years of worth being of building this, but if you look at the past year and the success that you guys have had, I think that just is easily to be able to quantitate, hey, why are they having that success? Why are they having these partnerships? Why are they being able to get through the door on certain things? Well, I mean, like you just heard you just speak about, hey, where do you see this going? How do you see it going? I think is really important. I know that we've talked a lot about the Kentucky Derby. We talked about the vibes and everything. We talked about the vision. I want to kind of like take a little kind of couple minutes here to go into a little bit about the game itself, right? And like how it works. I know that like, man, the Kentucky one thing I realized, and I actually this is one thing that like once I saw the Kentucky Derby, it was raining, right? And
Mhm.
I actually didn't know that they would race in those kind of conditions. And then I actually jumped into your game and I realized that there's like the weather is a huge factor into these
Yep.
races and like the track conditions. And I was like, and like bro, that's just like the level of
Yeah.
the things that I kind of like really get excited because it's not something that you like slapped together and said like, hey, this is
No.
this is it. But like you really kind of again went deep into why and how this kind of works all like for what you're building, right?
Yeah, I mean it's part of that. As I said, I spent 10 years at EA Sports. That was my first like real job. I was 19 years old when I started working on Madden, and I think it's in the game. Authenticity is ingrained in my being, and so if I'm going to make a horse racing game, it's going to be the Madden of horse racing. It's not going to be a joke. It's got to be realistic and authentic, And that's what I loved about EA Sports games from age 7, right? I loved playing and having attributes and all the stuff that mattered and keeping my own stats. Um, so that's the core of Photo Finish. If people are looking to play, it is a very hardcore game. I mean, I'm gonna come out and say, like, if you're looking for a short, quick arcade experience, it's not that. It's a strategy management game. It's much more like playing daily fantasy than playing Madden, right? But the idea is relatively simple. You buy a horse and you race it for money. That's really straightforward. You enter it into a race and it runs. You don't control it. We're watching races here that all of the horses in this race are owned by real people. But the skill comes in of choosing the right race for your horse. And again, if you've got just one horse, it's really not all that hard. You look at your horse and you see, what does he like? Does he like mud, or does he like firm ground? Does he like grass, or does he like dirt? Does he like turning right, or does he like turning left? Those are sort of the core things, and you just find races that try and match up. That's the skill, but then it kind of branches infinitely out from there. You can start with that, and you can play at very low stakes, a dollar or 50 cents or whatever, and start to kind of get your feet wet. But quickly, the majority of people that get in and start understanding that, then they start to spiral into the depths of breeding, choosing allowances, different race types, different stakes types. There's all these different things, distances. How good is your horse in a sprint versus a long distance race? A lot of things build on top of that, but it's the same as playing Madden, right? Like, you start up and you just play, and you just play a game with the Titans versus the Rams or something. But then eventually you get into franchise mode and you're drafting and you're doing free agency, and it's just like the same. It's the same idea, really. Hopefully decently kind of easy depth up top, and then it's deviously deep down at the bottom. I mean, there's genetics, there's uh, the horses are aging. There's all kinds of extra
Yeah.
depth that happens under the hood.
Yeah, dude. I like man, you're just hitting on some of my questions right now. So hold on. All right.
Yeah,
So this is a live race. How many live races are there happening on a daily basis, do you think?
yeah, every couple minutes. So I mean, I don't do the math, but 100,
Yeah,
200,
yeah.
300, a lot. Yeah,
That's just insane. So like
yeah.
that just kind of tells me like anybody could jump in and it's not waiting for a race. Like
No,
the races happen, right? So it's not there's no like, hey, I need to connect to the server. I don't need to like wait for the
no one
next
has to be online. Yeah, I mean, it is slower paced though. I mean, you think of it, it's like having a real horse. You've got to ship them off to the track and you got to wait. So they race once a day. The horses do. They get tired. So again, imagine this game much more like daily fantasy. You set your lineups, you wait for the results, you come back the next day and check in on it, and that's how it runs. So it's a slower paced game, and I think that's good. Like, it's not a heavy, especially when you think about these crypto guys. Like, if you're out there trading, you got to be in the trenches. It's a lot of work. You can just set up a race, one horse, spend 20 minutes finding the right race, put him in. He's going to race in a couple hours, maybe he races in 10 minutes, who knows? But that's all that you got to worry about. That's the lift. You don't have to sit there and grind all day, right? You're not training him. You're not sitting there clicking buttons. You're not in a Telegram bot, or anything, right? You're just one race, and then come back the next day and see how he did.
Ryan. Oh, I think we lost him.
Me?
Oh, there you are.
Okay.
Ian, like let me ask you a question. Like I see the racing and all this stuff. Where like sorry, this is my marketing BD hat now on. Is there ways to sponsor like these events? Like is
Yeah.
that something that's part of as well? Because like man, like for those that are watching this and like for those that are like, other partners, NFT communities, exchanges, like oh my god, like there's an audience here, like you're breaking through like some of the biggest walls, like man, they better like reach out to I think it was Ryan, his name, that they better reach out to his DMs right now and say, hey, how do I sponsor you guys for the next season? Because these are just massive like ways to get to be able to work with partners within Web3.
Yeah, one of my favorite features of this game is, so if you click on the little menu up at the top and go to the tracks page, there it is, fifth one down, yeah. So every track in our game, aside from Churchill Downs, is actually owned by players, real people. And
Oh
so
wow.
this was our way to decentralize the game. And how do they own it? Well, they stake Crown to take ownership away from us. So you can imagine, like, we own it by default, but if you're staking crown, it's yours. And so you can look here. Blockbet is a perfect example. They're sponsoring races at that track through that owner, not through us. And so anyone can work with the owner of that track, and you could create a sponsorship. You can see it there with tokens. Say you create a meme coin. You're trying your best to market it. You got a little bit of life. You need some more holders. You don't quite know, like, oh, what should I do? You could actually come in here and just send a tranche of tokens to that track owner, and if he approves, then he'll put that sponsorship on the tracks. They'll show up on every race. They get airdropped to every person, real person that's racing while they're racing. So they get airdropped as part of the purse. So they have to compete to actually win the sponsorship. So it's like you just go splash some of your tokens on, and we've seen some like really great Major and Lucy, a few of the other ones like Costco Hot Dog, a few others have done these pretty um, big things that end up like they grow their user base by hundreds and hundreds of people that are real. And these are Solana OGs. It's the same as airdropping it to Seeker, or Solana Saga people. And it just shows up, and now you get content too. Like, so you have hundreds of videos that have your logo all over it. Your billboard is on the track itself. So that's one of the cooler parts of the game is like, and we don't do anything. That's the users and the track owners are out there in the ecosystem, kind of making those deals.
Yeah, I mean, I love that the tracks are so built out, and then right underneath it, you got the breeding as well, and it's like, okay, now we went from the track. Now, like, talk about
Mm-hmm.
strategy, right? I think strategy is like one of those things where, hey,
Yeah.
man, I know this guy called the gaming strategist, so like, strategy is one of those things where I love to like really deep dive because that's as I get older, I can no longer play those shooter games or any of those
Right.
because man, like the way that they move is just insane. But games like this totally excite me because I have a real chance at winning. So,
Right.
here it's got these breeding. Talk to us a little, if you can, on like the horse breeding and like you quickly talked about, hey, turning right, hey, dirt and turf, like firm, soft, like man, these
Mm-hmm.
are like details that like, yeah, man, I think like before I choose the track, I need to figure out, or if I choose the track first, hey, I need to figure out which horse could actually go on that track.
Yeah, I mean, get breeding. You can think of the meta of this game in quite a few chunks. So, one person could join and just buy and sell horses and flip them like they're NFTs. That's possible. Another is a racer. They're in there every single day and they're trying to find the best race, and that's your daily thing. But the meta of breeding is extremely long term, and it's extremely in depth. So I'll try to not get too far in the weeds. But when you breed two horses together, they have to have the baby, which takes a month. There's a full season. This game operates in monthly seasons. So the pregnant mom has to be pregnant, gestate for a month, and then the baby is born. But then the baby is only 0 years old, can't race for another 2 seasons. So you have this sort of like constant growing up as the horses are aging out and getting older and retiring. There's new crops are coming in at this sort of slower pace. And so this is that deep strategy game though of working a bloodline. Like if you click on, I'll show you one. Go to creator sound check, for example, there. Yeah. And click on his name on the top right. Yeah. And then click on bloodline, that tab. So you can see he's come from a long line of horses that all of these horses have genes, genetics underneath. They have win-loss records. What are they good at? What are they bad at? And so there's a ton of strategy. There's also inbreeding. Like if you accidentally put like the grandpa in the line, it would damage the line from because the blood is now mixed. So there's just like all these really in-depth things, and so you're seeing the player base. Like this is the thing that really scratches the itch of the long-term strategy gamer. They're sitting there planning years in advance to try and grow this grade. I mean, this is a good example in those. So it started down at the bottom at S. It went to, well, actually S minus, nomadic nurse, then to S, then to S plus, and then now this one's SS minus. So they're working their way up, but there are like 5, 6 more grades that still haven't even been touched. There are no horses that exist yet. So and we've been alive for over 2 years. So there's a lot of growth that people are trying to do by matching up these horses' genes and see if they leapfrog and get stronger over time. I mean, that's really what they're trying to do. And just like real life horse racing, sometimes it's a dud, sometimes it's a beast. You don't know for months until it races and hits the track. So it really is. This is the strongest meta of I would say any crypto game, almost any game, because
Yeah.
it's just so deep and so long term. It's like playing a dynasty fantasy league with your friends. Like it's just like you get into the weeds when you play the breeding game.
Yeah, the retention for a client here is massive, right? Because
Yeah.
it gets more interest with as it goes, and it's like, how do I keep playing? And I think we know in all of this gaming, betting, and all that stuff, it's not the losing part of it is what makes you want to keep going because you
Mhm.
just you need to win, right? And it's like 7 losses in a row, and you're like, I know the next one might be it, and it's like, do you give up then or do you want to keep going? So I think
But
this
so
is
I'll
really,
just interject to this. The most interesting part though is like, why are they doing this? Well, for creator soundcheck, for example, people are paying to breed with him, and so that's the whole goal of all of this. Is like you create your own beast horse that wins on the track, and then now everyone else in the ecosystem will pay you thousands of dollars because they want that blood in their bloodline. And there are multiple people in our game that have made well over six figures, if not seven, selling stud rights, virtual horse semen.
that's
So weird, dude, but it's real. It's true.
yeah, man, dude, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you giving us the classes, the insights. What do you think is let me ask you this funny question. What do you think is the most overrated stat in horse racing?
Uh, that's an interesting one. God, I don't know. I mean, in our game, I mean, there isn't one. We tried to balance that, but in real life, I don't know. They tend to like. It seems like they will always care a lot about the size. Like you see that, like, ooh, boy, that horse is large. He is strong, and it's like it seems like that hasn't really mattered all that much. Like they're like little smaller horses have continued to win or whatever. So maybe that's one that I would say I hear a decent amount of.
Yeah. And let me ask you the next rage question that I have for you. A lot of these races are determined by less than a second or even less than
Oh
a
yeah.
0.02 seconds. How do you describe losing to by 0.02 seconds? Is that just a keyboard, hey, I'm breaking this in half, or a shot of bourbon will help all of this?
Yeah, shot of bourbon. Yeah, I mean that's horse racing. And it's like I've lost so many real life bets from the nose hair on a photo finish, and so yeah, that's part of it. I had a few misses this week, then this weekend that were just like a bad little step coming out of the final turn, and just blew it. So that's how it is, and I think that's the great part about the game and the sport and how it sort of all comes together is like if you are into horse racing or you want to get into it, like you get used to the sort of hills and valleys. Like you're accustomed to losing your money and winning money. It's not a grind or an infinite clicker type of game, right? It's much more like, all right, I'm okay if we lose, and I'm okay if I win. It's like, I know what I'm getting into.
Yeah. Ian, last one, right? What do you think is just the most thrilling thing of photo finish right now? I mean, like my mind is going a million miles an hour, and I'm kind of like I can't figure out which one. If it's the breeding, if it's the like actually racing, or if it's like picking the track and thinking that I know which horse is going to be the right one, and then I'm assuming like figuring out, hey, like, do I go big or do I go small? And not knowing whether, man, I should have went big or small on this
Yeah.
deal. But like, what's the most thrilling thing to you?
I mean, I think the most exciting thing that we're doing is the betting platform. So the simulcast and the OTB, because that really does afford us the ability to put the game into the hands of a lot of people. Like, oh, yeah, you've got the stream here in this feed. So this stream, if you hit play on this, and this is on Roku, like, as a TV channel. You can tune into this. It could be at any bar or restaurant, and people can tune in. And this race will run. It's 3.5 minutes from now, so we won't see it, but it will run just like it's real life, like it's TV. And so, bringing this game to the masses in this way, because as you can hear in my voice, like telling someone how to race and become a horse owner is a lot of work. Now it's not bad, but it's only for the strategy gamers, right? It's like it's not going to be for my mom. She's not going to ever want to run her stable and photo finish, but she might bet on one of these races, and so a lot of people will. I think that casual thing, and then this will be the way that I think you, as you see these horses walk by you in your bar, and you go, oh, I can own one of those. Oh, that's cool, and that's the way to sort of get in. Whereas I think in real life that is such a big limiter. Like no one has any idea how to own a real horse, even though they might really be interested in that idea. Oh, I would love to be in the winner's circle of the Kentucky Derby. It's just like, well, how do I do that? No idea. Whereas like virtual affords that. Anyone can do it. It's super easy. You don't have to take care of the animal. You don't have to feed it. Much different from real life.
Yeah, no, man, I got to give you guys credit. Shout out to you guys. It's really, really cool to see. I'm excited that maybe we got to do the next live stream is, the next major race and actually watch it live and
Yeah.
be immersed in that experience as well. And just kind of like know how that war room like feeling is, right? And it's like, how do you choose? Why are you choosing that? Like where the mentality is.
Yeah.
My favorites are those behind the scenes of like families and friends getting together to watch these and like why someone's choosing it, if it's because of a name or it's because of the look or it's
Mhm.
because of like, hey, what the family line of the horse is. So I think the next one we do, we definitely have to run it back and do like an actual live in real life experience. Like I think that's just massive. I think that's really the way to connect even further. So no
Absolutely.
pressure, no pressure there.
No, we could do it. I mean, we could put on a race. If you've got a team there, we could put on a custom. We've done it quite a few times with like streams where we'll put on a custom race with the folks that are on the stream, just their horses only. We can do kind of a whitelisted Solana Gaming Derby or Solana Gaming Cup, and you all race against each other, bet against each other, or we could stream. Preakness week, we could have a thing where we do a custom race there, and everyone picks Preakness horses or what have you. But yeah, or Belmont. But yeah, would be happy to. It's always fun to when you do those streams, like people screaming at the screen and stuff. It's great. It's always a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Well, Ian, appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming
Hey,
on.
man.
It was awesome to hear about the Kentucky Derby. It's awesome to hear where you guys are, the success that you guys are having. Shout out again, testimony to somebody that knows and understands what they're doing and building, and experience is very much needed, especially in the space now when we see a lot of funny things. And I think like it's really cool to see the product and the product having a good success because again, there was a true plan to what you guys were building. So shout out to you and your team. And
Thank you, sir.
I see you're rocking the Orlando City hat, so hopefully, those guys turn it around as well.
Yeah. Rough start. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
hey, maybe we got to catch a game together.
Yep.
So, once again, thanks for coming on. We'll make sure to check out the socials. Make sure you plug in. What's the website to make sure I don't mess it up?
Photofinish.live, or I guess Photofinish Game is the Twitter. You can follow, kind of go from there. But yeah, we give away free horses all the time. There's a lot of free roll challenges. A lot of people have gotten into the game for free and ended up, working their way up to huge profits and pots. It's a hard game, but it's also at the top level. It's not. You could just commit a little bit and you get a little bit of excitement. I will suggest as well, it's one of the best games to do cooperatively with a group of people. Because it's just such low lift, and you could say, hey, everyone, let's jump together on Discord at 8. Our horse is racing. You all, watching the race together. We've seen a lot of great communities, NFT communities, or even just like sub little communities have 3 to 5 people, and they'll join up and have a horse together. And it's just the same as, again, it's like having a fantasy team, that you kind of cooperate. Some reason to stay in touch with your boys from high school or whatever.
Yeah. Well, Ian, once again, thank you again for coming out to the space. And I'll leave everybody with some live racing for the next couple minutes. And to the next one, appreciate everybody that's tuned in. Appreciate everybody that's here. Everybody in the comments. I see you all again to the next show tomorrow, 10 a.m. EST for those that around the world. I don't know what the difference in time zone is. That's why you got Google and ChatGPT. So go find out. To the next one. Thanks, Ian. Have a good one.
See you, man.